Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, I figured I should start this game over just like the Calgary Flames did, without turning on the lights. Uh, and maybe it's to symbolize that the Quebec connection came and shot out the lights as Montreal defeats the Calgary Flames by a score of 2-1, and I'm getting tired of this bit already. There we go. Let there be light. Didn't take me 4 minutes to get those lights on, just like it took the Flames. But yes, the Habs come into Calgary and defeat the Calgary Flames in overtime. So the Flames do finally manage to surpass the winless San Jose Sharks in points, but can't get the full two as the Flames yet again fail to score more than one goal. Bonjour mes amis, and welcome to the Calgary Flames. It was supposed to be a crossover, but unfortunately due to some illness for Kay, it will just be me tonight. And thank you to those of you who have joined in chat already. I see King of the North in here saying no one wants to live in Hamilton. Yeah, I know. We're all good. Well, tell you what isn't good. The Calgary Flames is yet again the Calgary Flames. We now move to scoring 13 goals in 8 games. A rate just barely over 1. So that is what it is. It's kind of a funny moment if you're on Blue Sky and follow both myself and Kay. I don't have a way to throw this up on screen with the way I have set up, but both me and Kay did have the, oh my god, that is the least deserved point ever tweet at about the same time, about 5 seconds apart from each other. So it is what it is. I don't quite yap as much as Kay does. Kay, I love you. You know what I mean. So we'll try and keep this one a little bit more compressed, because not a lot of events to talk about, and I had a couple things I wanted to go a little bit more in depth with another perspective here, but since we just got me, we'll make it work. So we'll start off with our scoring breakdown. Started off with Zach Bolduc, his 4th of the year, assist to Nick Suzuki and Lane Hudson. It was a power play goal that I think a lot of Flames fans don't think should have been a power play to start off. And I know I was watching Andrew and Kay talk on Blue Sky on one monitor here down in the Conrad Krauser basement studios, and both of them were really talking about how Dustin Wolf was a brick wall, and you would need to, I think Andrew put it, that you needed to cross the center line at least twice with passes to try and get Wolf off his game. And it was proving to be the case that Zach Bolduc, it was a pass from low to high and then across that center line that led to the beautiful one-time shot. That puck was sauced and he took it just as it hit the ice. Gotta say, that's a 10 out of 10 quality shot, and it felt like it might have been one of those days for Dustin Wolf to maybe steal a game for the Flames. And hey, took home a point. Stopped 9 of 10 of the Montreal shots in that first period. And Calgary only managed to get 9. So put that in the tally towards Les Habitants. And then we also had the post-whistle scrum. So these teams don't see each other overly often. Just twice a year. Once here in Calgary and once in Montreal. But you couldn't tell it from the way this game was played. There was some animosity brewing throughout this one. I think there were a couple times where there was Canadians looking across the ice and seeing that it was either Kevin Ball or big tall Adam Klapka that they were pushing off against, and maybe thought differently of it. So, it was one of those games of pushing and shoving at the end of the first, but all that matters, 1-0 on the scoreboard, Montreal Canadiens. We go through the second period. Not a whole lot that I made even notes about for this second period. Dustin Wolf standing on his head, and I know Kay was feeling Dobes was really holding Montreal in this one. Really just kind of talked about it on the Flames broadcast, at least, about how the best players in this game were both teams' respective goaltenders, and I think you really saw that in the second period. Especially Dobes. Dobes stopped 18 Calgary shots in that second period, and also assisted in 3 separate penalty kills for the Montreal Canadiens. And the Flames have been atrocious on the power play. It was mentioned on the English broadcast out west that the Flames are now below 13% on the power play. And that's just, quite frankly, not good enough for a team of NHL players. You expect to be at around 20% for a bad team on the power play, and the fact that the Flames are 7 percentage points below that going into tonight, it truly is unexcusable. We'll talk a little bit about maybe some ways that the Flames can fix that as we head into the later periods of our show here on the Game Over Network. But before we get there, we have to get to how the Flames tied this game up, and just some good forechecking from Morgan Frost leads to a turnover, and Adam Klapka makes no mistake. Originally, it was going to be unassisted, but they have added an assist to Morgan Frost as he absolutely hounded down the puck. Who was it coming out from behind their own net? That was Noah Dobson who had the turnover. And I hate to keep pointing at the Sportsnet broadcast to talk about some of their talking points that came to prove a little wrong, but in the intermission, the panel said, your fourth line can't be your best line every night of the week. And if you want to be a successful team, which you can debate for hours on end whether the Flames actually truly want to be a successful team with how the roster is constructed and how some of the guys on the ice are playing. But for back-to-back nights, I think that fourth line was definitely the Flames' best line. They were giving the very, very talented defense core that the Montreal Canadiens have managed to build up. They were giving them fits throughout the night, and they really had to rely on their big guys like Struble and Jekai. Or I can never say his last name. Arbor Jekai. I apologize, Montreal fans. It's just one of those names I cannot say. They both played under 13 minutes in this affair today. So Carrier over nearly 22 minutes. Hudson almost at that 24 minute. Dobson around that 24 minutes mark. And a guy I picked up on fantasy waivers because somehow Kay did not select them in the fantasy draft. Mike Matheson, almost at that 25.5 minutes played mark for the Canadiens. So good on the Flames, putting the pressure on, not allowing Martin St. Louis and co to feel that they can go to that fourth line, or third pairing rather, as often as they needed to. And maybe that was some of the good pressure put on by the fourth line, because has to be said, Flames middle six disappointing once again. But good on Klapka for tying this game up. And then we'll go to overtime. Flames lose the opening faceoff. Michael Backlund loses yet another faceoff. If you're a Habs fan, you haven't known how much of a storyline that has been for the Flames for the past years. We cannot win a faceoff to save our lives. Montreal does we're just going to play possession and not let the Flames touch the puck for the entire time through the overtime period. And it works. Mike Matheson gets the goal, assists to Demedov and Newhook. Flames didn't touch the puck at all. And the more and more I watch overtimes and how 3-on-3 used to be this exciting period of back and forth action, it isn't anymore, and it's time that the NHL needs to do something. I generally save these kind of rants for later on in the periods, but it's pointing it right now, so I'll get right to it. The British Columbia Hockey League, obviously not a sanctioned Canadian league, But the BCHL might have done something right for once. They've started to penalize if you go back over that center line. It's almost like that over and back penalty in basketball. And boy, oh boy, am I starting to think that something needs to be instituted so that these teams can't just keep cycling possession. Because it's successful. There's reasons for that. Maintaining possession of the puck and not allowing the other team to have that opportunity to flow. Truly, it breaks the format down. But is that good for the game, or is it good for maintaining entertainment value? Obviously, maybe I'm looking at it differently as a Flames fan coming off an overtime loss than a Canadiens fan looking at this after an overtime win. But is that truly what you want in your hockey game? Is it just, we have the puck and we have the numbers and the opponent needs to not tire themselves out, so we're just going to consistently loop through the neutral zone? I don't think it's what's best for the game. But obviously it's now quite difficult for it to be changed because it wasn't part of this most recent negotiation of the CBE. CBE? The teachers are on strike here. That's why I've got CBE on the mind. CBA, Contract Bargaining Agreement. If it wasn't in there, we likely won't see it for another few years unless the competition committee seems to think that it needs to happen. And I really don't trust smart hockey men to say that this game needs to be changed, because as we all know, a lot of people in hockey seem to think hockey is the greatest thing and it doesn't need to be changed up. But I digress, and we're going to head off into period number 2 here. But before we do so, I don't have the fancy videos about some of the sponsors that are from our friends over in Montreal, but I am going to shout them both out. Inshu Bijou, if you're one of those people who seems to think spooky season doesn't last long enough, and you want to wear that as your jewelry and your statement piece, Inshu Bijou is your place to go. For their cult classics, which are definitely more on the affordable side, to their line of heritage jewelry, where it is beautiful bespoke pieces, one of a kind. You can find everything you want if you want to extend your spooky season. And hey, maybe you've missed that window for this year, especially with our striking postal workers, support to the unions. But if you want to make your purchases in advance for next year, there is some great stuff on this Inshu Bijou website. I wish I could show you. I really like the silver jackalope pendant. They've also got some really cool septum rings if you're one of the people who has chosen to get their nose pierced. Some beautiful, beautiful, gothic, spooky jewelry coming out of Inshu Bijou. So please, head on over to the Google machine, send some love their way, if that sounds like something that would float your boat. Period 2 is something that I think was talked a lot about in pregame on the English broadcast. But both these teams have kind of started to already see the injury bug take place. Obviously, this was only the second game of the year that the Calgary Flames have had Quebecois native Jonathan Huberdeau back in the lineup. But Martin Pospisil is still out for who knows how long. But then you look across the lineup, and the Flames aren't the only team missing key pieces. Patrick Laine obviously found out that he's seeking a second opinion on his injury. It's never what you want to hear as a fan of sports or a fan of certain players. And also Caden Gooley out for 4 to 6 weeks, as is now being reported. So both teams missing some key pieces, and you have to hope that's not the story of the season. Because it seems that ever since Patrick Laine has left Winnipeg, it seems that injury bug has kind of followed him wherever he's gone. And it's tough because when he is on and when that shot is in existence, it may be second to only Alexander Ovechkin. But that period of time where he is available to be selected and be on the roster seems to be coming less and less as he's worn the C on his chest. Well, the Montreal Canadiens logo on his chest. You guys knew what I meant. And Caden Gooley, I don't see Kay in chat today. I know she said she'd be here, but, Hamilton internet connection. I'm sure something like that. But living without Caden Gooley as well is going to test some of the depth here for the Montreal Canadiens. And as much as I don't think having Jonathan Huberdeau solves all of the issues we're seeing for this Calgary Flames team at the start of the year, neither will Martin Pospisil necessarily fix the laundry list of issues that have led to this Calgary Flames team only taking 3 points out of their first 8 games. It certainly has to be part of the issue. But it also raises some opportunity for some guys that are maybe a little bit further down the depth chart than maybe is deserved. I don't think we'd be seeing Sam Honzek have this much of a leash early on in the season without that injury. And also to add on to the injury bug, maybe a mental injury for Igor Sharangovich. Obviously, we haven't seen him return to the lineup in quite a bit. Well, 2 games now. I don't know. It was widely publicized last time Igor got benched that he changed his pregame meal and then saw some more success. But the problem with Igor Sharangovich isn't physical. It seems to be with his brain, and you're not going to see that show up on any lists. And you have to think that the Flames maybe have invested a little bit more into the sports science side of things, especially after the whole Oliver Shillington situation. So you'd have to hope that the Flames have some good therapists on the roster to help guys that are struggling. But those therapists have got to be starting to charge a little bit extra to Calgary Sports and Entertainment with how many guys need to get out of their head. I just keep thinking back to Ted Lasso and the sports psychologist in that show. As holy, like, it feels like there needs to be some just one-on-one conversations with a therapist rather than jamming as many games in as we have to because of the Olympic break. So I am going to put this question out here. Is the injury bug partially to blame for where the Calgary Flames have started? Is this injury bug going to be something that could potentially be a little bit of a derailment for the Montreal Canadiens, if you are a Canadiens fan joining us here on Game Over Calgary? Throw those in the chat and we'll talk about it when we get all the way over to overtime. But we'll head into period number 3. But before I do that, I will read out the ad from Montreal once again. Flames fans, this one might apply a little bit less to us. But if you are in the Montreal area, there is the number 1 spot for photo shoots, and that is Le Saint-Montel. Loved by cosplayers, influencers, families, and photographers alike. We also cater to businesses looking for interesting spots to brand activation, creative cocktail parties, and team building activities. Use the vibrant space to photograph products for your small business. And hey, if you're heading from Calgary to Montreal and you want to head on down, tourists will love the Montreal themed ball pit. Be sure to add them to your Montreal list of things to do. That once again is Le Saint-Montel. And I gotta say, there is some a lot of fun backdrops there. I like the one that has all the stuffed animals up on the wall. I think you could do some fun photos with that, especially around this season, the spooky season. I'm sure you could do something fun with that. But we'll continue on to period number 3, and I posted this out on Blue Sky. Because there is a parallel I think you can really easily make for this Calgary Flames team and a team of the past for the Montreal Canadiens. Because all the voices I'm seeing, and I'm in agreement, is that this Flames team has zero creativity in the offensive zone, despite guys that are allegedly supposed to be top offensive dogs in this league. Jonathan Huberdeau's contract would lead you to believe that. So see the same note with Nazem Kadri. The extension that was just afforded to Connor Zary. We all talk about Matt Coronado's shot. Igor Sharangovich, when he's in the lineup, seems to be one of the more creative players on the ice. And obviously, on the back end, you have this new offensive zone phenomenon in Zane Parekh. But as soon as they get into the offensive zone, it just seems like the lights go off, proverbially speaking. And this very, very much reminds me of the Montreal Canadiens in the pre-Martin St. Louis era after the 2020 season. Like, there's just... the talent clearly is there. Habs fans, you might be able to remember who was the coach before Martin St. Louis, before I can get the Google. Oh yeah, Dom Ducharme was the previous coach. Led them to the Stanley Cup in 2021, but obviously in 2022 got let go to allow for a more offensive mind to come in. And as much as we'll talking the Calgary market about Murray Edwards not wanting to pay two coaches, he also doesn't want to lose this fan base and all the momentum from last year with a potentially momentum-killing season. As everyone here that's coming to talk about how fantastic Dustin Wolf is, you're 100% correct. There's a reason he just got the contract extension he did and is maybe the only player that's playing like they deserve that contract. But there are a lot of parallels to how the Flames are playing, to how the Canadiens played in that first half of 2022 to Dominic Ducharme. And I can't remember, because this might be more of a question for the Habs fan. As I said, my Habs knowledge is not as deep as it once was. But did Don Ducharme get a contract extension after 2021? Because if in my brain, I think that's one of the similarities, again, to that early 2020 Montreal Canadiens. Because we have to remember, as Flames fans, we just gave this massive, we don't know the contract details exactly, but a 2-year extension to head coach Ryan Huska. And no matter how much CSEC doesn't want to pay another man to be behind the bench, I think you have to start thinking about that. Like, and I agree with everyone that's probably out in the internet land saying, but that's a cop-out. The players just aren't playing. Yeah, but you can't replace players as easily as you can replace a coach or a general manager. And I don't necessarily think Craig Conroy is what's wrong. I think the contracts he signed have made some degree of logical sense. But I don't think the system that is being coached is what is going to lead this Calgary Flames to continue development of these guys like Connor Zary, Zane Parekh, Dustin Wolf. Because the system that I'm almost beginning to feel is that this is turning into a Daryl Sutter light system, where we're just going to believe that Dustin Wolf can keep this modern NHL to 1-goal, 3-goal affairs. It's so hard, to know from the distance that we are all as fans, to know what the attitude in that room is, because we can only judge by what's on the ice. And as I said, K's, I thought should be here, but K's taking care of themselves, which is great. But it really, really feels like the Flames have tuned him out. Especially somebody who maybe played his best game of the season tonight in Nazem Kadri. but it still wasn't a good game for 91. And the Flames, for once, won the face-off battle, winning just over 52% of the face-offs in today's game, something we harp on this program a lot. But I'd love to see what high danger chances were for this Flames squad. I'm just starting to feel that the coaching, as we saw with Ducharme, he gets the Habs all the way to the finals in 2021. Great. But the team started to tune that coaching out, and I think we're seeing a lot of the same here with the Flames. You can tell me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm right, fans from both Flames markets and the Montreal market. Just give me your thoughts on that. And speaking of your thoughts, it's time to head to overtime. Thank you to everyone who comes in, whether you're a Calgary regular, if you're one of our friends joining us as part of the Montreal Canadiens contingency. Zisek, I believe that's how you're going to say that name. Gregory Debeau, obviously David Tokay, regulars here in the Calgary chat. King of the North, I've seen you over in the Game Over Montreal viewers. Anand, shout out. Anand will have your next Calgary Flames. Or no, not the next one. He'll have the one on the 26th as your host. KQ is in here. Denim Man, my housemate. I think you might have heard scrambling around outside. Jordan Taylor. Zachary Dion. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming in. And I've seen this comment a lot, so I'm just going to bulk it in together. And I have to assume it's a lot of Montreal fans coming in because they don't get to see Dustin Wolf as often as we do. Talking about the highlight reel saves and probably talking about the stop on Hudson that he had at the end of the second period. That is Dustin Wolf. He is a battler. He is getting paid like one of the best goalies in the NHL because that is what the potential he has here in Calgary. But it seems to be not enough. Like, as we see, like, this Calgary Flames team is inept offensively, and if you look at some of the other guys that are writing blogs and media in this market, a lot of them are pointing to, oh, the luck is bound to change at some point. Is it? That's something you can control, is how lucky your team is? If so, that's news to me, and I've been watching a lot of sports for a lot of years wrong, if that's the case. Dustin Wolf is incredible. I don't think you are wrong in saying that. The split save was mentioned in the chat. He threw up a 929 tonight. And we don't have the defensive depth that the Montreal Canadiens had in front of Dobes tonight. Because if you look at it, Rasmus Andersson, of course, out there with Kevin Ball. Kevin Ball, he's been okay after his contract extension. Zane Parekh out there, I believe was out with Hanley again most of the night tonight. He played 12:42 tonight. Unforgivable. Play Zane Parekh more. I don't care if you're feeling you're going to get scored on. Zane Parekh leads to more exciting chances for this Calgary Flames team than any other player on the ice. And then you had the Uyghur and Bean pairing, which was abysmal. Because I think Mackenzie Uyghur's having one of his worst seasons we've seen since leaving Florida. But we'll head on into overtime here because I'm seeing some conversations in the chat. Let's get that period up. So we're seeing a bit of a conversation here between Denim Man and David W. Agreed. I see the current Calgary Flames play, and there's no cohesion on the offensive zone. They seem kind of selfish. I don't know how to say it. I don't necessarily see this Flames team as a selfish team, but I think they're all gripping those carbon fiber sticks until they're absolutely fibers, because none of them can score. And like, for a guy like Joel Farabee, it's been effectively 2 seasons of inability to score. The thing is, Toronto replaced their highest percentage winning coach in their entire history for Berube. It's just unfair to think Berube can save the Leafs when their best coach ever couldn't. I don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs are necessarily the comparable I'd look at. Like, did the Montreal Canadiens become world beaters overnight? No. But they allowed Martin St. Louis to instill a system that is definitely offense forward, and allowed their natural skills, guys like Nick Suzuki, guys like Gallagher, Newhook, Demedov. I don't think he's telling Ivan Demedov to go play defense and go play as part of a system. Allowing guys like Lane Hudson to be a offensive defenseman, to allow Mike Matheson to be one of the best second pair defensemen in the NHL, despite the fact he played first line minutes. I guess it's hard to determine the D pair 1 and 2 on the Canadiens. Huska got us all the way to the most points in a season without making the playoffs, and the players turn on him. Ungrateful. It's okay. We've had long conversations about this squad. And you've seen me talk about the Flames played way out of their depth last season. And the wording was always playing into the system. And then we've seen a complete lack of success this year, and talk about the system and belief in the character, or questioning the character rather, has started to creep in, because the character was, we believe in each other when we're playing for each other last year. The only guy I've heard say that is Mackenzie Weegar, and that's after the whole Kevin Bieksa situation. I haven't heard Michael Backlund, your supposed captain, who you just re-signed to an extra long 2-year contract. I haven't heard him saying that. When his line has been one of the worst, and he was, once again, below 35% in the faceoff dot. The guy that you rely upon to win defensive zone faceoffs. David has a response to Jordan Tyler, 32. We need to make our own luck. I don't think this Calgary Flames roster has the skill to make our own luck. Got to be good to be lucky, and lucky to be good, and we certainly aren't good. Token number 1 asking, how many Flames players can realistically fetch a first-round pick? I only really have 2 names that I'm thinking about it that could. And neither of them have been playing well this year. I just think pedigree alone gets maybe a first for both these guys. Number 1 being Rasmus Andersson. And it's the same 2 that Anand gave. And number 2 being Nazem Kadri, and that's if the Flames are retaining a whole bunch of salary. And I wonder if Jonathan Huberdeau and his lovely agent seem to start leaking stuff into the media. Like, it seems to happen every time Jonathan Huberdeau struggles. There seems to be, somehow, word gets into the media that there's a problem. I don't know if Jonathan Huberdeau, even with retention and sweeteners, can fetch a first-round draft pick. And that's if Huberdeau comes to the Flames and says, I just want out of the city. And we'll take the last question here, a point of national pride. How do you guys see the World Series going? As you know, I'm also the commentator of the local Okotoks Dogs. So I was hearing some of their thoughts on this now that the Blue Jays have made it to the finals. And a lot of them say statistics mean a lot more in baseball than they do in any other sport. And the fact that every other team that has gone to a Game 7 and advanced to the World Series has swept the next series, you can't deny that that stack is significant. However, the Dodgers may be the reason that a lockout happens because they buy everything on the open market and just leave it there for my thoughts on the Dodgers. But the fact that there might be a lockout coming because the owners, a lot of them can't afford to just go and buy everything like the Dodgers can, I'm hoping it's going to be a Blue Jays sweep. My logical mind says it will be 4-2. Blue Jays winning when it comes back to Toronto. Ermelli, I'm so sorry. We posted out on social medias that Game Over Calgary would be the only one due to some extenuating circumstances. Hopefully you can check out the post-game show on streaming or whenever. You can go back in this one. Go back and watch. Some good talk, I think, about both the Flames and Montreal Canadiens. And I am just going to put this out there. The Montreal Canadiens are really surging in the standings out east. I'll watch it later. Thank you very much, Ramelli. Canadiens up at the top of the standings, tied with the Red Wings, who just lost to Buffalo today. And the Flames continue their tumble and stumble around. Their minus 15 goal differential. Actually, I don't think that's been updated. Yeah, because we're above the Sharks now. 1-6-1. It's painful. You guys might have heard that. My housemate screaming about the fact that the Red Wings lost to the Buffalo Sabres. But this has been one of the most active chats we've had all year, so thank you very much to everyone who appeared in chat. As I said earlier, it's so nice to have an active chat, so nice to have this conversation with you, because so much of what we do here at Game Over is not built with us behind the camera. It's built with those of you who are in chat. Phobos, thank you for tuning in. Of course, Winnipeg comes into town on Friday. I will once again be hosting that game. So 2 hours and 45 minutes-ish after the first drop of the puck. As soon as the puck drops, we do try and start going real quick here on Game Over Calgary. And I don't want to take away from Anand, as he'll be hosting the first game on the 26th. But if you are a fan of prospects, I'm going to do a little self-promo here. If you are a fan of prospects and really, really like watching the next generation of hockey superstars, there is a big tournament going on next weekend up in Red Deer. It's the WHL Cup. The best U16 players from across Western Canada will be playing. And hey, if you don't want to head all the way to Red Deer, hey, I'll be honest, I don't really want to go to Red Deer either. If you want to watch, they're streaming all the games over on Victory Plus. And on Sunday, if you need to get away from whatever's happening with the Flames, if it's that bad, I hope it's not, but it could be. We all know how the record's been so far. I will be on the streams on Victory Plus for the final 2 games of Team BC, Team Alberta, Team Manitoba, and Team Saskatchewan. So if you want to watch some prospects and you like this guy right here, head on over to Victory Plus. For myself and the rest of the Game Over Network, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're heading over to Game Over Montreal, please be sure to follow Game Over on both X and Blue Sky. That way you're not left wanting to know if there's a stream. Or join us on Discord. We've posted on there as well. So, that's it. That's all. That's everything. We will see you again on Friday for Flames vs. Jets here on Game Over Calgary.